fight. We don't have to kill. Everybody in the whole wide world really just needs to chill. No, we don't have to fuss, no, we don't have to fight.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Just Chill with Oliver George. This is episode 51, and this is actually an extremely special episode to me. I will elaborate on that in a second, but before I do, I want to remind you, if you're watching on YouTube and you would prefer an audio-only version of this conversation, you can get that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and many other places like that. However, if you're listening to me and you didn't know that there was a visual side to this show, then I would encourage you and ask you to please come check it out on YouTube. However you do choose to enjoy the episode, though, if you could please subscribe, follow, share, like, any of that stuff really helps out a lot. I'm just trying to grow this channel from the ground up. So if you've already supported me, thank you so much. It really does mean a lot to me. Finally, if you want to reach out to me, maybe you've got a cool guest idea or just some general feedback about the show, you can hit me up at justchillpodcasting@gmail.com. Now, as I was saying, this episode is so special to me. I had the chance to sit down and talk with Kellie Nowell, who is the younger sister of Bradley Nowell, who was the frontman and musical genius behind Sublime. And anyone who knows me knows that Sublime has been my favorite band since I was into music. And I was always strumming away on my guitar and playing their CDs, and I just obsessed, really. And so I can't even begin to describe what this whole interview meant to me and just how amazing it was to be able to sit down and talk to Kellie. I actually reached out to Kellie like a decade ago on Facebook just as a super fan of Sublime, and she was so sweet to me. But being able to have a real conversation was just on the next level. And of course, the 25th anniversary of Bradley's tragic and untimely passing is on May 25th, which is the day after this episode is going up. So I was glad that we were also able to talk about all the work she's doing with Bradley's House, which is a center that they're opening to help people with opioid addiction, musicians specifically, regardless of financial status, just in honor of Bradley, and try to help people that may be struggling with some of the same things that he ultimately succumbed to, unfortunately. So like I said, I can't even begin to describe what this episode means to me. She preferred doing an audio-only interview, and obviously I want to make my guests comfortable. So rather than bore you with a one-sided Zoom interview with just me, I actually thought it would be way cooler to come up with a slideshow of Sublime and Bradley images, and just sort of to accompany our conversation. So I hope you enjoy this experience as much as I did, and I hope you find it as magical as I did, because really I'm still just speechless that I had this opportunity. So thank you so much.
This is so cool just to be able to talk to you. I feel like I kind of know you because I've had a lot of Facebook messages back and forth with you. And yeah. I had all my research done, but that was the last thing I just checked now was how long ago was it that I messaged you? And it was March of 2010. Wow. Over a decade ago.
That was like right when I got on Facebook? I think that was right around the time I got on Facebook.
It must have been, because I wouldn't have been surprised if I had searched for you before,
That's crazy.
Well, that's growing up in Canada. I mean, there were Sublime fans here, but it was nowhere near like what you guys must have had in California. I always felt
right.
Somewhat unique in that being my favorite band. I knew a few other people, but I also would meet people who had no idea who they were. And just being able to talk to you and get in touch with you was so huge, because it almost felt like a fairy tale or something every time I would get into Sublime's music, because it was, the beach and the palm trees and all this stuff is so far from Canadian winters.
I'm sure. Yeah. Where in Canada are you?
I'm in Ottawa, nation's capital.
Oh, goodness. So yeah, you're way on the other side.
Yes, the East Coast. We're kind of like the Washington, D.C. of Canada, so to speak, with parliament buildings and all that.
Oh, nice. Is that where you're originally from?
Yeah, I'm born and raised here. I've done a bit of exploring, but not too much, actually. I'd like to travel more once all this nonsense is over.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for taking the time to talk with me. I got to start with that. I don't even know where to begin. I have so many questions for you, obviously about Bradley and about Sublime. I also gathered some questions off of Reddit, because one thing I've found about the Sublime community online is that they're mainly amazing people. And there's so much love for the music that I had to reach out and give some people that opportunity to ask you stuff. So we'll get to that first. But before we get in any of that, I want to talk about the really relevant new stuff that you're doing with the Nowell Family Foundation and with Bradley's House, because it's just so important, and it's obviously poignant with the tragic anniversary of your brother's passing coming up in a couple weeks. So I wanted to just get to know a bit more about it. I know it's supposed to be a 6-bed recovery facility in Laguna Beach, I believe. And
Laguna Beach area. Yeah, near there. And actually,
Okay.
most likely in San Juan Capistrano, which is right next to Laguna.
Okay. I am not super familiar with California locales, but I'm very supportive of this idea because you're going to be helping struggling musicians with opioid addictions, regardless of their financial status, and helping them. Well, I love the quote from Todd, actually, where there's a will, there's a way out.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
profound words, you know? So I wanted to know, what's the current status on the facility?
Well, we're still raising money. It's taken longer than we'd hoped. Where our budget to open and operate for the first year is $750,000. And we have about, I think we're almost up to 175,000 now.
Wow, that's still impressive.
So yeah, it's, considering we've always been just super grassroots, didn't really know what we were going to do to make it happen, but, just had a desire to help and figured if we could somehow use the connections that we had and the name recognition to somehow, bring the resources together, that would be a really awesome thing. And so we didn't really, start this with any big grand plan necessarily, except that we knew what our end goal was, and that's to open Bradley's house. So we've just kind of been going wherever the opportunities take us. And it's really been an incredible ride so far. We're coming up, this July will be 4 years.
Wow.
And so much has happened in the last 4 years. And of course, the biggest stuff is just within the last 9 months when we've had the House That Bradley Built album that came out from Law Records. And that's been a real game changer for us.
Yeah, that's such a great album. I was actually going to ask you, what was your favorite part of that album coming together? Because there's so many amazing artists included on that.
Right. Well, it was cool because I did get to ask some of my friends to be on it, which I thought was really fun. And, but it was totally the brainchild of Paul Milbury, who's the general manager of Law Records. And I met him for the first time at Cali Roots I always want to say last year, but it was 2019. It was the last Cali Roots I went to. We were supposed to go again last year, but of course it got canceled, and this year's got canceled. So we're stoked to go next May. But I met him for the first time at Cali Roots, and he said, he was a huge Sublime fan. He said, Law Records would love to do something for the foundation, but we're super busy right now, maybe in the fall. And I thought, okay, well, that's great. Sometimes people will say things and they don't pan out, which is fine. Everyone's got great intentions. But come fall, in October, he reached out to me and said, hey, can we get together? I've got some ideas. So we sat down and he laid out his idea for the album. And I said, if you can make that happen, absolutely. Because we'd sort of just lightly talked about doing something like that over the years. But I certainly don't know the first thing about putting an album together. And my dad doesn't know anything about, that's a real undertaking.
For sure.
And so, when he said he wanted to do it, I thought, wow, this is actually someone that could do it. So I gave him my blessing and just said, tell me what I can do. Tell me what you need. And he just ran with it. I mean, he did I still can't believe it to this day. It's just surreal because he literally just pulled the whole thing together so quickly and in such a beautiful way that was honoring to Brad's memory and honoring to the foundation and honoring to my family. It just was done so incredibly well. And all of the people involved donated their time, and all the proceeds go to the foundation. And it's just, the whole thing has been mind-boggling. He copied me on all the emails. So I would see all these emails going back and forth, some of them from bands that I didn't know personally. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was freaking out. It was really cool. So, just seeing the whole thing come together. And then we had the double vinyl that came out last September, I believe it was September. Gosh, I'm getting all my months confused now. But anyway, last fall, I believe. And, that was remarkable. We had, I think, 25 different tracks on 2 vinyl. And then in January, we came out with a 3 CD disc set that has those same 25 songs plus another 30 something songs.
Oh my God. So, I haven't heard that one yet.
Oh yeah, it's phenomenal. There's so many. I think there's 55 tracks altogether. It's really mind blowing. And it's such a great combination of artists that were inspired by Sublime and some that were inspirations of Sublime's. So that's really
true.
cool to have those on there too. Like Jim Lindbergh of Pennywise and the Descendants, and they're doing their own songs that Sublime had covered.
Yeah.
So it's just really cool. We have Half Pint on there doing Lovin', which is where Brad got the refrain for What I Got. And so it's just a really neat combination of newer bands and older bands, but everybody just doing it out of the love that they have for Brad and Sublime. And that to me, just the whole concept itself is so overwhelming and beautiful.
Spectacular.
I was really stoked.
I think that really speaks to like what I was saying before, the fan community for Sublime. I think the internet has really helped connect those people, and now they're all coming out of the woodwork, and you realize how many Sublime fanatics are really out there. I used to think, there weren't that many of us, but it seems there's a ton, and I couldn't be happier.
Totally.
People on the Facebook groups, I wanted to shout out to Reed Clow and Eddie Villa, because those guys are always posting like footage no one's seen and pictures no one's seen. And it's such a treasure to be able to have these what feels like new Sublime, even though these are old photos and stuff. But for a diehard fan that's always scouring the internet, trying to find every little morsel, it feels like a gold mine what's been coming out in the internet lately. So
absolutely. Well, I like the way you put it. The internet connected all the Sublime fans, and that's such a great thing to be able to have everybody be able to feed off of that and share that stuff. And and it's absolutely true. Reed and Eddie are amazing. There's a handful of people that are such like historians of the band that when I have a question, I go to one of them because they know so much, and they
they're thorough,
they really, it's incredible. Like they can see a picture of Brad and know what show it was from based on which tattoos he has and what version.
I know. I used to think I was so hardcore, and then I see those guys and they put me to shame.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're really amazing.
Well, and what you guys are doing with Bradley's House and the album is just so nice, because obviously when someone passes away, but especially from under the circumstances that Bradley passed away, it's so tragic, and it's so nice to be able to try and find some sort of a silver lining or a positive outcome to that you can try and help other people avoid that same outcome.
Absolutely. There's no way to take away the pain when something like that happens, but it does help. It's very healing to do something positive in regards to that, so being able to help other people. And, even before we have the house open, I get messages all the time from people that are either looking for help and we can give them referrals, or, they just want to share their story and know that someone understands. And it's just incredible, the number of people that have reached out to me, and I've been able to, share that pain with them and just, let them know I understand what you're going through. And that really, it really does mean something to know that someone understands. And so that's been a really cool thing too.
And I don't want to try to compare this in any way to the pain that people must have felt who actually knew Bradley, but I got into Sublime when I was about 13, I want to say grade 9. Wow. It was 99. So he was already passed away, unfortunately. And I remember, I was lucky enough, even to this day, to not have had to deal personally with a lot of death, with people very close to me. But especially when I was that age, I still had all 4 of my grandparents. So I really hadn't had any kind of brush with that. And when I found out, after falling in love with their music, and I found out that he had passed away, which I wasn't privy to, it was soul crushing. He was the first person that I really mourned. And I still do to this day, because his music had such an impact on me. And I don't know, it was just something about the whole everything. The more I dug into the band, the more research I did, the more it just sucked me in. And I just wish I could have met him, and I wish I could have told him how much everything he's put out there has really inspired me to pick up a guitar and sing. And I know so many other people feel the exact same way. So it's just beautiful to see people connecting in their love of Sublime.
Absolutely. Every day I wish that he was here to see his son, to see my kids, his family, and also to see how much people still love and remember him. And I think that is just a true testament to what he accomplished, that, here almost 25 years later since he passed, we're still talking about him. People's lives are still impacted by him. They're still listening to the music. What he and Bud and Eric accomplished is really remarkable. And at the time, I don't think they could have possibly foreseen it. I know, they were working hard, and they certainly deserve all the success that they got. But I think it's impossible to really, project this far in the future and totally comprehend what it would be like. And so it saddens me that Brad's not here to see it, but it's such, it's very heartwarming to know that, that other people miss him. We used to go to the cemetery on his birthday and the anniversary of his death. And a few years after he died, other people started showing up. And I thought it was so strange. Like, what are these people doing here? I didn't get it. I didn't totally understand. And now there's always big crowds there. And so
it's like a pilgrimage every year.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't actually go on those days just because, it's kind of a personal thing and it's hard for me, but I so appreciate the fact that so many people do go and do remember him. I just think it's the coolest thing. Just the fact that his music is still impacting people enough that they would want to go do that. It's one thing to listen to the music, but to actually, get up and go and seek out his grave and that kind of thing is I just think it's really wonderful.
I remember wanting to make the trip down myself, but then I had kids in my early 20s and that kind of went out the window. But
they change everything, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying about not really predicting or being able to maybe imagine where his fame would go in the future this far in advance. Part of that, obviously, because their breakthrough album came out, unfortunately, after he passed away. But also, as I've mentioned on this show before, I don't think there was a more transformative decade in technological advancement, at least with social media and all that kind of stuff, than there was between 95 and 2005. So really, they kind of just missed the crest of that wave that I think a lot of bands sort of really kicked off on.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Just being able to connect their fans sort of more distant, far in between. One other really cool thing that I think has come out of this is that now you're doing a podcast also titled Bradley's House.
I am.
I've caught a few episodes. You're a natural, and your co-host Garrett Orr, he seems like a diehard Sublime fan, which is...
He's wonderful. He's the whole reason the podcast exists. He was the one who came up with the idea, and he approached me, and I thought, hell no. I mean, there's no way I have time to do it. I run the foundation full time and I also have a full-time job to pay my bills and I'm a single mom. And working 80 hours a week, I thought there's absolutely no way I can add one more thing, but I didn't want to tell him no right away. So I figured I'd wait about a week to let him down easy. And then, I told him, I don't really have the time. This won't, just not a good fit for me right now. And so he said, well, can we just have a conversation on the phone? So okay, fine. So we talked on the phone and I have to warn you, he's a salesman, boy. He just, just the way he explained it, I'm just like, you know what? You're right. It would be great for the foundation. It would be a great way to generate some revenue through sponsorships and get the word out. And so I said, okay, fine. We'll do it every other week. And then a few months in, we started doing it every week. And so now it's a weekly thing.
Podcasting's addictive, right?
It has been so great for getting the word out and so great for engaging people. And, we're starting to get some sponsors and that brings in revenue for the foundation. So, I can't really say no to anything that's going to get us one step closer to opening the house.
Well, and it's so cool too for big fans, because these kinds of interviews that you're doing now, we used to have to try and get, like you'd get snippets of it on the documentaries that they put out, like Story Tales, Lies and Exaggerations, and 94 to 96. I remember getting those DVDs, and every little tiny morsel of information you could get was so cool. And now you can listen to, Miguel or Roz MG for like 2 hours telling you all this cool stuff, and it's just mind blowing.
They're great storytellers, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. I can't wait. I've only listened to a few, but I really want to listen to one with Jacob and Miles from Slightly Stupid. You had stellar guests. Which brings me to my question. Is there a guest that you're extremely eager to have on your show in the future?
Ooh, that's a great question. We do have a list of people that we're looking at having on. But I feel really fortunate that I've already had the opportunity to have some of my favorite musicians on. One of them happened totally by accident. I was asked, because of the House That Bradley Built album, I was, asked to do different interviews for podcasts and print media and that kind of thing. And one of the requests came from a podcast in the UK called Punks in Pubs. And it was a guy named Liam Bird, really great guy. And I was, had a great conversation with him. It was really wonderful. And then I was looking through some of his past guests, and one of them was a musician that I've been a huge fan of for about 10 years named Frank Turner. And he's like this folk punk artist over in the UK, and my kids and I've seen him like half a dozen times. And so I mentioned to Liam, oh, yeah, I'm a huge fan of Frank's. That's so cool that you've had him on the show. And he said, well, if you'd like, I can introduce you and you can see if he'll do your show. And I was like, yeah, right. So anyway, he sent an email of introduction, and sure enough, Frank was down to do it. So I was able to interview him, and that was my fangirl moment. All these Sublime related ones are all for Jarrett. He's the one that, knows the questions to ask and stuff, the Sublime related stuff. But on that one, I don't know that he even got 2 words in edgewise, because I was so excited to be talking to Frank. And that was a really cool moment for me. It's still kind of unbelievable to me that it happened, but yeah, that was really fun for me.
That's amazing. It's actually funny that you say that, because one of the guys I had talked to on Reddit here spoke about that specifically. He wanted you to know that the fan base in the UK for Sublime is as strong as ever. And he really enjoyed your interview with Frank Turner and says you're a legend for everything you do with the foundation. That was Who's Got Your Belly? Who's Got Your Belly 42 on Reddit.
Oh, that's very cool. I love that somebody else enjoyed that episode.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
when you mentioned
episode.
it, I had to say.
Yeah, I just figured, a lot of people around here don't know his music very well. And so I was excited to be able to, share it with a new audience if possible. And so, yeah, I've heard from a few people that enjoyed it and who had heard of him. So I thought that was really cool. Yeah, that was definitely a highlight for me.
I'm sure people are wondering if you're going to have Bud or Eric on or.
Possibly.
Do you keep in touch with those guys or?
I haven't seen Eric in a really long time. I saw Bud a couple years ago, I think. They made a Sublime documentary and premiered it.
This is what I was going to ask you about.
Yeah, they premiered it at the Tribeca Film Festival. So my dad and I went back there to New York for the showing, and Bud was there. And it's the last time I saw him. But yeah, it was good. I thought they did a good job. It hasn't been released yet.
I know. I was going to ask.
Last I heard. Yeah,
so many people are hounding me. You got to ask her about the documentary.
Yeah, they're still looking for a distribution deal. It's got nothing to do with the family or, the foundation or anything. That's all on Sublime's management company, and who, they hire to handle all their affairs and the licensing and the management and all that kind of stuff. And so they're the ones who put the whole project together. And of course we helped out because I wanted to, if they're going to make a documentary about my brother, I certainly want to make sure it's the best it can be. And so that, so many fans were great, including Reed and Eddie and my friend Luve. And there's just so many people that are big collectors of Sublime memorabilia and know a lot of the history. They were gracious to help out, and they just, shared so much of their knowledge and their time. And so I really hope that the documentary comes out, because, they haven't even had a chance to see it. I have no way to see it except, when I saw it at the premiere. So, yeah, I hope it comes out, but that's all I know.
Yeah, it seems a little strange. I don't think anyone thought it was going to take like a couple of years to find a distributor,
Yeah, they said the first year was tough because there were a lot of music documentaries that came out. So the competition was really difficult.
And COVID, I'm sure, doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next year COVID hit. So, I certainly don't know any of the behind the scenes details on that. I just know that they haven't found the distribution deal that, that they're looking for yet. So
people just have to keep waiting.
I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say the
or,
pandemic
listen to the podcast.
Sorry?
Or listen to the podcast.
Yes. I was going to say the pandemic probably contributed to, not the greatest funding, like reaching your funding goals and stuff must have come slowing down a bit because everyone's budgets were really tight when everyone was losing their jobs and the whole.
That's what we expected. But because of the album, last year was our best year yet.
Oh, amazing. That's great.
Yeah. And at that point, really at the end of 2020, we'd only gotten, had we even gotten, I'm not sure that we'd even gotten any of the proceeds from the album yet, but just because of the increased visibility and the exposure, it was a tremendous year for us. That's so cool. Yeah, which just blew my mind. I mean, prior to that, everything that we'd done was all, going to shows and music festivals and selling merchandise on our website and that kind of thing. And the last we had February of last year was super crazy for us. We had like 2 music festivals and 3 shows, and it was crazy, which doesn't seem like much, but it's a lot when, you're working 2 full-time jobs in addition to all of that.
Yeah.
And so it was just such a whirlwind, and then everything shut down. And our last show, I think, was the end of February. And we thought, oh gosh, we're not going to have any way to get out there and spread the word and, sell merch and that kind of thing. But as soon as things started, with the promotions for the album and stuff in summertime, everything just picked up, and we started getting more traffic on our website, more merchandise sales, and so much more happening on social media and people donating and that kind of thing. Like I said, it was our best year, which is really mind blowing, but it was fabulous.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm going to make sure, obviously, to link the appropriate links so people can go and donate and try to contribute. I know my audience is still growing, but hopefully a few people will pitch in.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you doing that.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I fully believe in this, and I hope everything does get funded.
And I know it will. And I really don't think it'll take us as long to get to our goal as it has to get to this point, because so much of what we've done was just spreading the word and raising awareness. And so hopefully with the increased exposure from the album and all that, we'll be able to get it done sooner.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. The ball's already rolling for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I am going to pick your brain with some Sublime/Brad questions just because how could I not, right? This is a dream come true. I wanted to know, anyone who's listened to Brad's music knows that he is constantly sampling things and covering things. He had a ton of influences, and most of them were, well communicated. But I wanted to know if there were any artists or bands that he was really into that might surprise people.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, we grew up listening to all kinds of different music, which I think is a big reason why there's so much variety in the sounds of Sublime. Our whole family was super musical, and so even extended family. So music was just a real big part of our lives, and all different kinds. I mean, in the 70s, our parents were super into folk music, and around 1980, Dad got into country for a little while. There's all kinds of stuff. At the family parties, we would sing all kinds of music. A lot of the standards that my grandparents grew up with, and all the way up to stuff by Peter, Paul, and Mary, and like everything in between. And so there was a lot of that. There was never this sense of, you just have to find that one niche and stick to it kind of a thing.
Stay in your lane. Yeah.
Yeah. I think sometimes, when we're growing up, we sort of, we're attracted to a certain music genre, and we sort of stick with that. And it can be very limiting. And
many genres come with like an associated persona too, like you're punk or you're hip hop or you're,
right.
Yeah. It's an identity,
Exactly. You're exactly right. And so I think it can be difficult sometimes for people to really, branch out from that and experiment with that. But for us, there was never any of that sense. It was just music is music, so listen to what you like. And one day it might be one thing and another day it might be another thing, or, even within the hour that you're listening to music, it could be, 5 different genres. So there were all kinds of things that we grew up listening to. And I think that that's pretty obvious in Sublime's music. Yeah. He, for some reason, the one thing that sticks out in my mind, I remember him, I think I must have been in junior high, and he was telling me about the Dead Kennedys.
Okay.
And I was just a punk band, and I just, for some reason, I was a very, very naive child, and I just was mortified that someone had a song like Holiday in Cambodia. Like it just was, and he thought that was hysterical that I was so disturbed by it. So that sticks out in my mind a lot, but I don't think it's that surprising,
no,
that
really,
Brad was into punk bands and reggae, but there's a lot of stuff that gets sampled in his music that, maybe wasn't something he necessarily listened to a lot, like George Gershwin. He uses several different Gershwin samples, and it wasn't something that he was necessarily listening to, but it was something that he was aware of because of just the super varied
his
music
eclectic
that was
taste.
going on. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Well, sort of on the same alley as that last question, I want to say, or I wanted to know rather, is there an artist or group that's emerged since he passed away that you think he would absolutely love?
Oh, Guy, that's a tough question because I certainly don't want to exclude anybody.
I mean, not to play favorites, but someone huge,
Yeah, I really think the fact that there's so many bands that have been influenced by Sublime's music,
yes,
that would really be that would be a mind-blowing thing for him, because it's one thing to have a band that you like, but it's another thing to have a band that's like really influenced by what you've created, and the fact that there really is a whole genre of music that came out of what Sublime created. That means that there are hundreds and thousands of bands to choose from that all have a similar style but give it their own spin.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the most incredible thing for him to realize. I
always thought it'd be so cool if he could listen to Slightly Stupid's discography, seeing as how he set them on the path sort of to where they are now, not only with influencing them, but he saw potential in them and he gave them his vote of confidence,
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely been quite a ride for them too. And, who knows? I'm sure they would have found a way to make it big regardless, but I think it's really cool that Brad was able to have a hand in that.
They're extremely talented musicians on their own, for sure.
Yeah. And
I was actually supposed to see Slightly Stupid. We drove down to Jersey in, I want to say 2013, summer of, and they canceled the concert because they said there was going to be a storm with lightning and it didn't even end up raining a drop.
You're kidding.
Yeah. I mean, we went to Six Flags. We were doing a couple other things in Jersey, so it wasn't like the whole trip was ruined, but it was a bummer for sure.
Yeah, sure. Disappointing.
Yeah. I want to know, because Lou Dog was such extremely special to Brad, obviously, but he became like a mascot for the band. And I wanted to know what made the connection so deep. Was it that you guys had a dog growing up and he was recapturing that? Or was it that you never had a pet and he finally got to have a dog?
That's a very good question, Oliver. Actually, we grew up with all kinds of animals. We grew up with dogs and cats and bunnies and fish and
somehow I'm not surprised.
And rats and mice. And literally we had all of those for pets. So, having animals was just a very natural, normal thing. And Brad he was always the kind of person that liked to have somebody there with him, whether it was a girl or a dog. He didn't like to be alone. He just liked, he didn't have to necessarily be doing anything super exciting, but he just didn't like to be alone. And so I think having a pet for a companion was just a very natural thing for him. And, especially our dogs, of all the animals, our dogs were definitely the biggest presence in our childhood. Our first dog that we had, when I was born, the first one, I was 9 months old, and we got an Old English sheepdog puppy. Wow. And Brad named her Little Miss Muffet. So he was about 3 and named her Little Miss Muffet after the nursery rhyme. So we had Muffy for 13 years. And so she was a big part of our growing up. And then we, had a string of animals after that. And, my dad had some dogs that he loved. And so when Brad got Louie, it was during a time, I think, I'm trying to remember exactly when he got him, but I think it was a time when he wasn't living at home anymore. And I'm pretty sure Dad still had a dog or two, but it was sort of happened by accident. Brad just heard about this guy who had a Dalmatian, and he was working all the time. So he'd leave Louie in his bathroom in his apartment. And Brad just thought that was horrible. He felt so bad for the dog. And so he offered to buy him, and the guy sold him to him. And from that moment on, they were inseparable. And I think because that was really the first time Brad had a pet that was solely his, it wasn't the family pet. It was just his. And, and so they just did everything together and went everywhere together. And I remember showing up to shows that they'd be doing at, little dive bars. And if the club owner wouldn't let Louie inside, he would just be sitting there outside the door waiting for him. And it was just crazy. You walk up, see this dog just sitting there waiting. And he just, Louie was just as dependent on Brad as Brad was on him, if not more so.
And he got them into quite a bit of trouble sometimes too, it sounded like.
He did. Yeah. I always say pets are like an extension of their owners. And that certainly was the case with Louie. But yeah, he did get them into trouble. He was not, he could be a very sweet dog, but he was not known for being super friendly. And, and I'm sure it was just because he was around crowds all the time. And I'm pretty sure he was, had gone deaf, if not almost deaf. Right. So it was, probably a little overwhelming for him sometimes, and he could be a little unpredictable. And he didn't like skateboarders, and they took him on the Warped Tour. And, it just... The normal average person would be like, this is probably not the best environment for this dog, but Brad didn't give a shit. He just wanted to take the dog with him. So he did. And a lot of times that would end up with Louis biting somebody or growling at somebody. And, it's funny now, I'm sure it wasn't at the time, but they were inseparable. They were really essential to each other's existence. And when Brad passed, Louis was clearly depressed, and it was obvious. He just was moping around and, looking for Brad. And it was really sad.
Wow. That's so cool to share all those stories, though. Thank you so much.
Sure.
It sounds like he was bound to be an animal lover by the way you guys grew up, though.
Yeah.
And I had heard or read that he bit a piece of Todd's lip off. Is that true?
I'm not sure what he bit off. I know Todd had to get stitches. It was when they were filming the date rape video.
Oh.
And before they did Todd's scene in the bar, Todd was bending down saying hi to Lou Dog. And it was right near they had some food set out. And so I don't know if maybe, Louis was trying to get the food or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, he just kind of bent down to say hi to Louis like he always did. I mean, Louis certainly had no issues with Todd, but he was just kind of unpredictable.
Whoa, what's going on? Oliver's shitty laptop. That's what's going on. Yeah, while we were talking, my computer decided to freeze and I had to reboot everything. Kelly graciously waited while we took a little time out, but we picked up right where we left off. So enjoy.
So Todd was bending down to say hi to Louis, and they were friends. Louis knew him. It wasn't like he was a scary person or anything, but maybe because he was standing by the food table, or I don't know, for whatever reason, Louis snapped at him and caught part of his face, and he had to get stitches. And so they had to postpone the rest of the date rape video shoot. So most people know that the date rape video was shot at Fern's bar, but the remainder of it, the bar scene with the date rapist, which was Todd, where he's hitting on the girl, that all took place at Sam's Seafood in their bar, which was actually in Surfside, right across the street from where Brad was living when he passed away. And it actually was a place that we used to go to when we were kids with my dad for like special occasions. It was cool. It wasn't like a super fancy place, but for us it was, because at the time, we didn't have a lot of money. And so when we had like a super special occasion, we would go to Sam's Seafood, and they had this big like light up sign with a swordfish and all that. So it was a big deal for us when we were kids. So I always thought that was cool that they ended up shooting part of the bar scene there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely didn't know that. So that must have been a few weeks later when he had time to heal up.
Right, exactly. I'm not sure how long it was spanned, but it definitely was a bit of time so the, stitches could be taken out and all that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if he still got a scar from that.
That's a great question. I have never thought to ask him that or really to even look for it, but hopefully
kind of a cool scar, like at least with that story behind it,
Well, Todd's got lots of stories.
Oh, yes. I loved his documentary as well. I thought that was really
Isn't that fantastic? Boy.
Oh, my God.
If anyone has not checked that out yet, I highly recommend his documentary. It's called The Long Way Back, as you know, but just such a phenomenal documentary. And I think it's still available on Amazon and Google Play and iTunes and that kind of thing. Yeah,
I bought it off the Xbox somewhere.
So good.
It's like some of the facts he was saying about himself. It's a miracle he's still alive.
Right? It really is. Yeah. It's remarkable. And that he can function. I mean, they seriously thought that he was going to have permanent brain damage and, need assistance for the rest of his life. And
good Lord.
Yeah. And he's actually the one who came up with the idea for Bradley's house. He's the reason that we started this whole thing. And he's on our board of directors. And so he was
one of Brad's best friends, right?
He was a big part of, the whole Sublime thing. And he was always I call him the instigator, the ringleader, the MC. He was, he's just that kind of person, even without the drugs. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's the hype man. Even without the drugs, he's the hype man. But, with all the drugs, it definitely just amplified all that for sure.
Yes. It's funny, when we were having this brief hiatus here, I was kind of pacing around the room and I started noticing all these Sublime things that I have in the studio here. Of course, when we were doing in studio, the first thing they see coming down the stairs is I've got the big 40-ounce circular rug.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, it really looks great. It fits in here perfectly. But I found the old VHS that I probably bought at the local store when I was in high school. I found a Zippo that I've got with Bradley playing guitar on it.
Nice.
These are all my teen relics. And then I've got the the guitar book for the self-titled album, which has an inscription from my parents from 2001
Oh,
as a present.
that is so cool.
Yeah.
Wow,
I
from
just thought
2001.
Yeah, I would have been, I guess, grade 10 or 11 or something.
Oh my gosh, that's really cool.
Yeah. I do have so many more questions, so I want to try and get in as many of these as I can because this has been so awesome already.
Sure, bring it on.
These you've probably gotten before, but I'm still very interested to know, out of the 3 big studio releases that they did, I guess big studio release doesn't really fit for Robin the Hood. That was all over the place. But the 3 main albums that they put out, which is your personal favorite? And then to add on to that, do you have a favorite song from their entire library? I know it's a big question, but
it is a big question. I couldn't say a favorite song. That's really difficult. That's like saying, picking a favorite child. But I do have some favorites, and they tend to be the older ones that, it's probably just a sentimental favorite because they go way back. I was in college when they started the band. And so as soon as Brad gave me a demo tape, that's all I played in my car. And everybody knew if they got in the car with me, they were going to have to listen to this band Sublime that nobody knew. And because, it was my brother. And so that's what I played. It just was a no brainer for me. So those, would be the songs like Don't Push and Slow Ride and that kind of thing.
Okay,
I just love those. Yeah, I love Date Rape because I remember when he wrote it and he was so excited about it. I know he got a little tired of playing it after a while because that was their big radio hit for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's all anybody wanted to hear. But when he first wrote it, he was really proud of that. I was mortified. I'm like, you can't say those things. And he said, it's message music, Kelly. It's message music.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a
Which it
satirical
is.
take.
Yeah, exactly. But, at the time I was 2.5 years younger. And so, I was shocked by the things he was saying in the song at the time. But definitely the 40 Ounce to Freedom album is my favorite. So, they produced 40 Ounce and Robin the Hood all on their own. And it wasn't until the self-titled that they had the backing of a major label. So the fact that the 40 Ounce album is so solid, start to finish is just really incredible. And it's just, it could be partially a sentimental favorite, but that's kind of what I grew up listening to, so to speak. When it came out, I was in it came out, I think 92. So I would have been 21, 22 around there. It just, to me, that, the fact, anytime I can listen to an album start to finish and love the whole thing, I think that's an incredible thing.
Definitely.
And there's, probably half a dozen albums in my lifetime that I can say that about, but 40 Ounce is definitely one of them.
Yeah, well, with Robin the Hood, it's a little more awkward if you throw that on at a party because then you've got these Raleigh soliloquies coming in every once in a while, which are great in their own right, but it does break up the flow of the music a bit.
For sure.
40 Ounce, I would agree, is my personal favorite album, partially just because it has so many songs. It's like 23 tracks, I think it is.
Yeah, it's
and
huge.
They're all over the place. You've got folksy stuff like Rivers of Babylon. You've got punk stuff. You've got it was just a really great sampling of what Sublime is all about.
Exactly. I totally agree. Yeah.
I mean, not to throw the self-titled album under the bus
No,
or anything.
they're all great. Yeah. Absolutely. And there's great tracks on Robin Hood. I mean, there's a ton of great stuff, but if I'm talking overall album, I think just because I just connect so much with 40 Ounce. If you put all 3 of those albums in front of me and said, which one do you want to listen to first?
Yes.
I would definitely go for 40 Ounce.
Secondhand Smoke is a pretty close runner up too, because I remember just finding that and being like, oh my God, there's more. I was so like sad. And I remember I used to try and I used to order bootleg DVDs and stuff off eBay.
Sure.
Because I didn't know where else to get this stuff. And I remember I'm pretty sure I cried the first time I saw footage of them really playing a concert because I had only ever listened to them and I had seen photos of Bradley, but to just see him animated and really oh wow, this is really him, it's just
and
so
connecting
powerful.
with the music. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there were a lot, I really love the acoustic album, Bradley's and Friends.
Yeah.
I love listening to that one because it to me, it seems very personal. To me, that's Brad sitting on the couch, just strumming his guitar while I'm doing something, it's just in the background. And so I love that for that reason. But, all the other albums after the self-titled were all just, put out after he passed away. So it was trying to, pull together whatever recordings they had, anything they could remaster, that kind of thing. So I'm glad, that they had so many albums that they could put out because there was such demand for it. But, it's really all just either stuff that, we'd heard before or, rehashings or studio outtakes or random live shows, whatever. And those are all great too. But, start to finish, I got to go with 40 Ounce.
Yeah, it's the bootlegs and stuff. I think it almost became in the Sublime community. At least I felt this way. Like it was like the stuff of legend. You know, you'd be like, "Oh, I heard that MCA's got all this amazing footage from when they were tracking self-titled, and they don't want to release it because this, that, and the other thing." And maybe there's some truth to that, but like I saw something just the other day, maybe a couple months ago now, but it was like a party with the Ziggins. And it was something I had never seen before. It's just Brad getting up on the mic and all these people hanging out. And then it cuts off with them doing like What I Got live. You can tell he's starting the guitar and then it just cuts out. And I'm like, somebody probably has that footage, but why is it always so hard to get these things? I don't know.
You know, it's weird. It's hard for us to comprehend in this day and age where everyone has a camera in their phone.
Yeah.
But, you know, back then, even video cameras were not as ubiquitous as phones are now, you know? So, and it was not common. You wouldn't like necessarily just show up at a show with a video camera.
The camcorder, yeah.
You know, yeah. It was,
Who's this weirdo?
And bulky, right. I mean, you know, you had to be very intentional. And so there wasn't this sense of recording everything. You know, now when we go to a show and they start playing your favorite song, pull out your phone and you record it. So you have it. And, you know, you probably never even go back and watch it again, but it's just the fact that you can. And so it's hard to comprehend the fact that there's so little out there of Sublime, but you know, that's just how it was back then. It wasn't that common to do. The last Sublime show I ever went to, they had 2 sold out nights at the House of Blues on Sunset Boulevard in LA. And we went to the second night and we hung out before the show with Brad and Troy, and my dad was there, my stepmom and my husband at the time. And we just, you know, we're all hanging out and we had brought our camcorder and because it was a new novelty thing, you know, and taking video and stuff. And, you know, so we have a little bit, but it's like grainy and dark. And, you know, it's not like how it is now when you can just pull out your phone and everything's crystal clear. And so it can be very frustrating for, you know, for fans that are wanting to see more, but you know,
it's also part of what makes it so magical though, right?
Probably. Yeah.
I don't know. At least for me, that's every time I see something new, it really does take me back. And I go, wow, I can't believe there's still more. And it keeps me hungry for more and that hope that there's still going to keep being new things unearthed.
Yeah. And I'm sure there will be. I mean, I don't think that there's anything that anyone's really intentionally holding back unless they feel like, you know, maybe they just want to keep it to themselves or, you know, I know there's some people that are hoping to, you know, that'll be their big score someday or something. But but you know, I certainly know from the family's point of view, we're not sitting on a collection of anything. You know, as soon as he passed away, our whole attitude was, you know, we want to just share everything we can. We were so thrilled that there were people that wanted to be a part of, you know, Sublime history and wanted to know and see and things like that. And so, you know, we gave a bunch of stuff to the Hard Rock that they did a big display at the Hard Rock Hotel in Vegas and, you know, all kinds of stuff. And so there's really, I can't really think of much of anything that we have that people haven't seen except, you know, the picture that I have of Brad peeing naked in the woods when he was like 6, but, and, you know, given time, I'll probably post that as well.
I'm always hoping that there's people, you know, that don't realize they're sitting on something, that they filmed something and it's you know, buried in a box from a move or something like that. Sure. Yeah. We can hope.
That's right.
I want to switch to a question that's, you know, maybe not as fun to talk about, but I really want to know, I'm pretty sure I know how you feel about this because when I was looking through our old messages, I talked to you about this like 10 years ago. So I'm also kind of curious if your opinion on it has altered at all in a decade. But what was it like for you when the whole Rome thing started in 2009? Because I remember just as a fan up in Canada wanting to revolt, you know, so. Yeah,
there's obviously, you know, mixed feelings that people have about that. I think that it's, I understand that people want to hear the music played live and, you know, by the people that created it. So, you know, being able to go and see Eric play bass on the music that he created, I would imagine is a wonderful thing for fans. You know, I get that. I totally get that.
Pick a new name.
I think it would have been nice if they had come up with a new name, but again, you know, I can't fully appreciate I can appreciate what it was like losing my brother and the devastation that brought. I can't fully understand what it would be like to have put my heart and soul into a band for, you know, 8 years and really be able to see things starting to happen and be on the uprise, and then have that all just disappear, so I try to put myself in Bud and Eric's position, and I totally understand why they wanted to do it, and and why it is something that a lot of the fans appreciate. So I certainly don't think it's anything for me to judge whether it's right or wrong. I get it. I get why they did it. I get why people want to see it. I get why people go. So, it's just an unfortunate thing. If Brad were here, he'd be playing his own music. And I love hearing people cover Sublime songs, but it's hard. It's hard for me to hear other people playing his music because I see the crowd responding, and it just makes me sad that he's not here to see it. Yeah. But I certainly don't begrudge anybody playing the music.
Yeah, I mean, you made a lot of great points there, and that's a really healthy attitude towards it, of course. But I remember feeling really frustrated just as a fan and thinking if they had just picked a different name, they would have had my full support. And then I heard about, that there was some sort of legal, dispute, and where it sounded like Brad had asked or had put it in his will, essentially, that he didn't want anyone to use that name if he was not part of the band. So when you saw that the ex-bandmates were trying to fight that really just left a bad taste in my mouth. I remember thinking, like, really? You're going to go against, your friend's wishes? But it's a complicated situation, of course, like you described.
It is. He trademarked the name, but I don't think it was ever his thought that, if I die, I don't want them to reform the band. I certainly don't think that he thought in those terms. He didn't trademark it to keep his bandmates from using the name. He trademarked it to keep other people from using the name.
Okay,
so, so it becomes a very muddy thing. He died without a will. He did not have anything in writing about what he wanted. So it's not like he explicitly said, do not ever reform as Sublime. It's a difficult thing when someone dies and they're such a big part of the music. He wrote so much of the music and created it and really put so much of himself into it. Just like, Eric's bass lines are uniquely Eric's and Bud's drumming is uniquely his. And, for a while, Marshall was doing the drumming and Kelly Vargas did some drumming. I mean, and they all put their unique spin on it. And so to replace any one of them, you're going to have issues. But I think with any band, whenever you replace the lead singer, it's a different, it gives it a different vibe, and it gives it, and so it's hard. It's hard for a lot of people, and you're bound to have mixed emotions. Some people just want to hear the music and they want to hear it played, and and other people want to hear it from those people. But if someone's gone, there's nothing you can do about it. So it's just one of those things where he did have the legal right to it, but I don't think that it's not like he ever projected this far ahead and was trying to keep them from using it. And so I think that's kind of the thing to remember. So if people want to hear Eric and Rome play Sublime's music, then they should go. And if they want to hear Badfish or any of the other tribute bands play the music, they should go. Or if they want to, anybody, if they want to go hear Post Malone play a Sublime song like he does so often, go. It's just, I think it's just a personal preference, and I personally don't judge anybody for wanting to go and hear it. I just am super glad that people still do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go on any forums and rage about Rome or anything like that, but I don't know that it'll ever fully sit well with me. And just the name, it just seems like a simple adjustment. I understand there's the notoriety of the Sublime name. I'm sure it helps sell concert tickets and all that.
That's
but
the whole point.
Long Beach Dub All-Stars, everybody loved them. And that felt so right because it was all these people from the crew. I think that was the other thing, was that Rome was just, at least to the Sublime fan, was just this random guy who was like half their age who just showed up, and it was like, what? You're just going to take over where Bradley left off? Like, it just felt weird. I don't know. True. But I do think the important thing to remember is that it was not Rome's idea.
He was approached. He was approached by Bud and Eric. And so I honestly don't know Rome. I've never met him. So I don't know anything about him, and I can't speak.
Yeah, I mean, he's a talented musician. I'm not going to.
He is a very talented musician. Yes, by any means. Absolutely. So I can understand from his perspective. I think anybody who's a musician, if they were approached by someone and said, "Hey, you want to, front this band that's pretty much legendary at this point," I don't care. Well,
it sounds like it was his favorite band too, growing up or something.
Whether it was or not, I can understand why he would want to do it. And so,
of course, it's a huge opportunity. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, that's a super healthy approach to looking at that. But it's interesting to hear it from you because, again, this is, you hear so many things online or just through the grapevine, and you never know. And half of it turns out to be incorrect or skewed to, the wrong way.
Sure. And everyone's welcome to their own opinion too.
Yes.
I'm certainly no one to say that someone should think a certain way or another about anything, but
definitely. I want to know, this is much, much more of a positive one. How amazing, this is just an open-ended question, but how amazing is it to be able to watch Jacob follow in Bradley's footsteps, musically speaking, but also forging his own unique sound in the process,
Yes. Thank you. Yes. I absolutely love it. And my favorite part is that last thing you said, that he's finding his own sound and his own voice. And he is, I'm a proud auntie. I could go on for hours about Jacob. I think he has done such an incredible job of finding his own way in, it would have been so easy for him to just play his dad's music and everybody would come and listen and love it and tell him what a great job he's doing. He was 11 months old when Brad passed away. Yeah. So the fact that he gets on stage, and I have chills right now, he has the same mannerisms, and it's not because he studied his dad. It's just because that's genetic, in him, it's just who he is. And I can only imagine how easy it would have been for him to slip into his dad's persona and his dad's sound and all of that. But he has so much to say on his own. And I really believe that it shows the strength of his character, that he was willing to stand up and say, you know what, I'll play some of this, but look, this is who I am. Look, this is what I want to play. This is the sound I want to have. And he really is pursuing that with his band in such a great way. I mean, he's an incredibly talented artist, and the other guys in his band are incredibly talented, and they're making great music. And it's not a Sublime sound. It's not even in the reggae rock genre, but it's who he is and it's who they are. And the more they do that and the more they create their own sound, the more prouder I am of him because he's not taking the easy way out, and a lot of people look at it and see that, he had this built-in audience, which he did. He absolutely did by his very name and who his father was. People will go to Law shows just to hear them play. But I will tell you this, a lot of people love his music who have never heard his father, don't even know who Sublime is. And the fact that he never had the opportunity, like most growing bands do, to play to small crowds, to play in bars where nobody's paying attention to them, make mistakes, go through their growing pains. He did everything in the spotlight. From the minute he stepped on the stage, he had a massive audience. And I don't know, right? I don't know many people that could have endured that kind of pressure and really come out on top. And he has done that. And he did it at a very young age. He started his band when he was 17 and And so he's overcome so much. And I think a lot of people get hung up on the fact that, it's so easy for him because he's Brad's son, but he doesn't have the freedom to make mistakes when no one is watching. From the very first time he picked up a microphone, people were judging him. And most people don't have that. When they're starting out, they can find their sound and make their mistakes and nobody's paying attention. And he's had to do it all in the spotlight. And I give him a huge amount of credit for that.
That's
huge
crazy,
amount of credit. Yeah. And he's an incredible person. Like, even if he wasn't my nephew, I would be so impressed with him because he's overcome so much. And, he's had his own struggles with addiction, and he's been sober for over 4 years now. And he's just a remarkable human being. And, I can't talk about it too much or I'll start crying because it makes me so sad that Brad isn't here to see what an amazing young man his son is. But he really is a remarkable human being, and I'm incredibly proud of him.
That's so beautiful to hear you say all that.
Yeah.
I agree. I think he's awesome.
He truly is Brad's biggest legacy. I mean, the music is wonderful and has touched, hundreds of thousands of people's lives. But, real talk, like, Jacob is Brad's legacy. And it's the thing that I think he would be the most proud of.
That's so cool to hear you say that. I think they're really awesome for going in their own path, like you said, because they did have that one EP that came out that had kind of a Sublime sound, and it was great. It was awesome, but I really have been enjoying him taking this sonic journey of his own. And what you said about the mannerisms and stuff is so cool because he does sing in really his own style, but he does have, little things you catch here and there. Like he has that growl, that punk growl that Bradley used to
He
do.
does. Yeah.
And the ability to sort of transfer from that to this really like beautiful, eloquent sort of, pretty singing and just kind of pivot between the two. And that's something I would definitely attribute to Bradley genetically, maybe.
Yeah.
But wow, that's so cool to hear you say all that. Well, anyone who hasn't checked out Law, definitely go look them up because you won't be disappointed.
Absolutely. And they've got some new stuff coming out soon. I'm really excited about.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I'll keep an eye out for that then.
Stay tuned.
Oh, this is just kind of a fun one. Like a lot of these are just kind of like wanting to know stuff about Brad, because where else are you going to find out what his favorite? Well, you'll see.
Okay.
So obviously they did the Hong Kong Phooey cover. And in the beginning of the Saw Red acoustic, there's Brad talking about watching Star Trek and eating Chinese food. So I'm curious. And I saw a post from you actually on Instagram where you talked about waiting in line to see Star Wars with Brad. So I wanted to know what were some of his favorite films and television shows?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. We grew up watching a lot of TV. I think that's pretty common from, broken homes. Set the kids up in front of the TV. We were latchkey kids from first grade. Both of our parents worked. They got divorced when we were very young. And so we would come home and watch TV. And so we watched a lot of TV. I honestly don't remember favorites. I just know what we used to watch. And of course, Hong Kong Phooey was one of them. And I do remember standing in line to see Star Wars at the Cinedome in Orange, California. We just, all the typical stuff that was on in the 70s we watched. I remember watching even very young. I remember Sesame Street and the Electric Company. And then as we got older, I think it was like Friday nights, we would watch The Love Boat and Fantasy Island. And I don't know. It's just kind of the Saturday morning cartoons were a big thing. That was a very big deal. That was back when, there were like 5 channels that you had to choose from. And on Saturday mornings, there was only one channel playing cartoons. And so, I always say if I had known he was going to die, I would have paid more attention. But he was my older brother, 2.5 years older. And, he was doing his thing. I was doing my thing. And, when we lost him, I was 25 and it came as it was a surprise. It was a shock. We weren't expecting it. So my way of dealing with it was really just to kind of get all wrapped up in my life. I was married and, started having kids, and it was too hard. It was too hard for me to deal with the pain of losing him. It completely collapsed my entire world and I just couldn't handle it. So for a long time, for about 15 years, I just did not really think about it unless I had to. And so when people started asking me all these things, what was his favorite this or his favorite that? It's like, I wish I had made a mental note right when he died of all the things, instead of waiting 15 years to really try to re-engage in those memories.
Sort of blocking it out.
Yeah, because it was, and even now it is hard to talk about, and it's gotten a little bit easier since we started the foundation. And, now I've had to talk about it repeatedly over and over, but for a long time I just couldn't talk about it without falling apart. And, it was one of the single most defining factors of my life, losing him. And so,
I'm so sorry you had to go through. I know it goes without saying, but hearing you say all this, I can't help but my heart goes out to you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I certainly don't think that my situation's unique. I mean, we all lose loved ones. We all lose people that, that we think are always going to be there, and it shakes our world. And so I don't say those things because I think I'm special. It's just, that's my reality. Even though I was already married when he died, I felt such a sense of aloneness. And so it just, I don't know. And so that was just my way of dealing with it. And I wish now, looking back, that I had dealt with it differently. I wish that I had embraced all of those memories instead of just trying to block it all out because it was too painful. But, because then I would have a lot more great stories to tell people. But, every once in a while things will flash back and I'll be like, oh my gosh, you remember this? And, so I'll remember things like that. But anyway, that was my long answer to get back to.
No, that's great.
I don't remember his favorite shows or his favorite movies, but I do know that, Star Wars, I mean, everybody loved Star Wars when it came out. It was like 78 or something.
Well, and he mentioned Star Trek too, so I thought maybe he was a sci-fi guy or something.
He wasn't. It wasn't anything unusual. In fact, we would watch Star Trek every once in a while, but it was not in the regular rotation. For me, it was just because I didn't understand most of it. But I was again younger. And
I'm talking about Shatner, like the old school stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, Next Generation came out in like 89, I think. So I wasn't sure if that's what he was into.
No, it was the original. Old school stuff would have been what we would have watched. But yeah.
Well, you were saying about, what you went through losing him and how you're not unique. Because I know what you're saying, like there's other people who have dealt with loss from drugs and stuff, but your situation must have been especially torturous just in that, here's this band and they're working so hard, and then he passes away and all of a sudden it's like the world is rubbing it in your face for the next year, with all their successes, which is this bittersweet. Of course, you're happy that the album's doing well and that people are loving his music, but you're also, like you said, you were trying to sort of, excuse yourself from all that mentally. Mm-hmm. So that must have been really hard to have it kind of just all over the place, to kind of hard to avoid it, Yeah,
exactly. Everything you just said was right on. Absolutely. It was very difficult to get away from. And I didn't want to hear the music. I didn't want to be around anybody who knew him. It definitely was not a healthy way to respond, but that's my reality. That was how I dealt with it at the time. And so it was very hard. I don't know. I think it was probably maybe almost 20 years before I could, hear the music without getting really, really sad. And even now obviously there's still the sadness, but it still trips me out. Like every time a song comes on the radio or I see someone wearing a Sublime shirt or a bumper sticker on a car, I still get so excited because it's so cool. And I wish that he was here to see it. And I still can't believe it, but yeah, it was really hard for a long time because I couldn't escape it. So I feel like in a lot of ways, I'm grateful for the fact that I can still hear his voice or, see his image because it's so everywhere. But at the same time, I also can't escape it. And I do think that the way that we deal with grief is to learn to live without that person in our life. And he's still such a big part of my life that I can't do that, so there's good and bad with losing somebody who, is so in the public eye like that. I can't avoid it, which is hard because sometimes I really just want to avoid it. There's some days that I just can't. In fact, earlier this year, I went like a month and a half not getting on Facebook at all because I just reached a point where I just couldn't. There was so much going on in my personal life and with some sick family members. And there was just so much I just couldn't. And so I just didn't go on Facebook for a month and a half. And it was actually really good for me. It was really restoring. And it just gave me a chance to kind of heal a little bit more. And I think that that's how grief is. It comes in stages. And a good friend of mine told me years ago, there's no right or wrong way to grieve. And so I just go with it, and that's what I tell people too when they lose somebody. Like, don't ever feel bad for feeling bad, like there'll be times when the grief is overwhelming and you just need to cry and be alone and hide from the world. And there's other times when I want to celebrate him, and I think that that's all normal. I think we all feel that way when we lose somebody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, grief is like the deepest expression of love. In a way, it's showing what someone meant to you and what a profound impact they had on you, that they still resonate no matter how many years pass. They're still on your mind. It's oh my God. I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
I want to know, speaking of life and death, I know Bradley was very intelligent and very well read, and I've always been curious what his views were on spirituality and the afterlife.
Oh, that's a heavy question. I don't think anyone could totally answer that except for Brad himself. I do think that, all those things are very personal. Let me think here.
But he wasn't like a specific religion or was he
well, we weren't raised, well, let me say, what's the best way to say it? So we weren't raised with any specific sense of religion. We would go to different Christian churches just very infrequently. But then after our parents divorced, when I was 8, Brad was 10, my mom and my brother and I all became Christians, and with a very, personal type of a choice. And for Brad, that he sort of, over the years kind of wavered with that and wasn't, had just different levels of commitment, like we all do. I don't think that that's anything unusual. And so I think for a long time he was kind of searching, like we all do, looking for answers, looking for something that makes sense. And I don't know if he ever really found that, but I do know that, at one point he did identify as a Christian and did feel like he had a personal relationship with God. I couldn't, possibly speak to where he was at.
No, but he wasn't like a staunch atheist or anything like that.
No, I think he was always searching. We always had lots of interesting conversations about, what was possible and what was out there, and, different religions and that kind of thing. I'd like to believe that he knows the answer now, and we're all waiting to find out. But he was always seeking answers and always seeking some sort of clarity, I think, like we all do. Yeah. And, when he was younger, he found that in Christianity. And I think as, he went through his teen years, things became a bit more complicated. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I almost expected that he would be the type of person that would take little things from different religions, almost the way that he did with music, because he seemed like such a curious soul, like you said, and always, reading books from what I've heard, and always searching out knowledge. Very much so. He was very intelligent, very brilliant, loved to sit and read, and then loved to talk about what he read. It wasn't just enough to read it, but he wanted discourse. He wanted to share his thoughts, and he wanted to hear other people's thoughts on it too. And that was one of my favorite things about him, is that he was so well read and so intelligent, and could have, a great conversation. And, he was, he was everything from, wasted and barely able to perform to, super intellectual and having deep conversations. So, again, just a real person with all the different facets that go along with it, but definitely very intelligent. He was, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure I'm not the only one, many fans as well, but I've definitely, dreamed of just hanging out with him and picking his brain and chilling, but this is very cool and feels very close proximity. I'm so thankful that you're willing to share your time with me.
My pleasure.
My dad used to help with the show when we were doing things in person. He was kind of my tech guy over to the side, and sometimes I would ask him something. But with Zoom, it's and COVID and all that, it's not really necessary or safe in some cases for him to come over. But recently I started realizing I could still incorporate a question from him. So this is my dad's question. He wants to know how Brad first met Gwen Stefani, and if they were close friends. And I wanted to know if they ever dated, which I've heard people ask about a lot.
I wish I could give you a definitive answer on that. We would have to ask Gwen to know for sure. I don't know. Honestly, I know that they came up together, No Doubt and Sublime so No Doubt was from Orange County. Sublime was from Long Beach. So, Gwen went to school actually just a couple blocks away from where I went to school, because I was going to a private school in high school. And, so, where they were and where Brad was only about, 20 minutes apart. So it's no big surprise that, they knew each other because they were playing all the same clubs and that kind of thing. And so honestly, I'm not entirely sure how they first met, because at the time, even, when he passed away, they were still on the rise. So it wasn't like it wasn't like, "Ooh, you're hanging out with Gwen."
Yeah.
It was there's that band, Yeah. And so, but after Brad passed away, we had a tribute show, it was January of 97. So about I don't know what's that.
Was the
8 months
Enough
after he
Already
died or
thing?
whatever. Yeah, exactly. And No Doubt played, and so they were close enough friends that they wanted to do that. And I heard after, of course, later, many years later, I heard the same rumors that I'm sure you did about, did they or didn't they hook up?
Yeah.
And I always heard that, when he was not dating someone she was, and when she was not dating someone he was. So it was,
Passing
probably
ships
one of
in the
those
night,
things. Right. But
Yeah, I
obviously
thought you
they
might
were
have the
friends in
deets.
the bands. I don't. I wish I did, but I don't.
It's very cool still. Thank you for the answer either way.
Sure.
I have some fan questions, like I said, off Reddit, and I thought some of them were pretty cool. Someone, this was off Facebook, actually. Her name's Anne Margaret, and she wants to know what your favorite childhood memory was with Brad. And she added that her older brother passed away under similar circumstances in 2009. And she has so many fond memories of him, but there's one that really stands out. So she's wondering if you have one really particular memory in the same way.
My heart hurts for her for losing her brother similarly.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to include it here, because it just
for sure. I don't think there's any one thing that stands out. Like I said, it's just different times. There's different memories that'll hit me at different points. When we were very young, before our parents divorced, he was my world. When I was a baby, I was a late talker because he would talk for me. So I hear the stories about, how I would just like make a noise and Brad would be like, she's hungry, she's thirsty, she's tired. Like
your interpreter.
Somehow he knew. Yeah. Like
that's hilarious.
So I didn't have to talk. And then he went on a trip with our grandfather. And then suddenly I had to start talking on my own. And so I just sort of started talking in these full sentences because I knew how. I just didn't need to before, I guess. So, and my mom tells the story of her coming into my bedroom. I was in the crib and Brad was peeing all over the wall. And she said, Brad, what are you doing? And he points to me and said, she told me to do it. I couldn't even talk. So it would, just little things like that where he, that's just so Brad right there. We would go on road trips and, we were either fighting and had the imaginary line in the back seat that we weren't supposed to cross, or he was entertaining me with different voices. And he was very animated and creative, and he would draw me little pictures. I mean, these are all the things that are much more vivid memories for me. He was very protective of me, but then at the same time, he was an older brother and he could be a pain in the ass. And then, so it's like nobody else could be an asshole to me, but he could, that kind of thing. I think that's pretty typical.
Yeah, it's sibling stuff. Yeah,
exactly. So it's, it's just that kind of stuff that I remember. And I try to hold on to that too. And I think that's a big thing when you lose somebody. You have a mixture of, the bad memories because they're human, they're real people, and there's always going to be bad stuff and there's going to be good stuff. So over the years, I've just tried to really focus on the good stuff and embrace the good stuff. And so it makes it sound like Brad was a saint, but I guarantee you he was not.
He seemed rambunctious at times.
That's a good word for it. Yes, he could definitely be rambunctious, but he was wonderful, and he was obviously a big part of my life growing up. And that's why losing him was so devastating. And that's why my heart goes out to anybody who has experienced a similar loss. It was hard. He and I were the only ones until our parents started to remarry, and we have some step siblings and a half brother and that kind of thing. But, for the first, 15, 17 years, something like that, it was just he and I. And so, when our parents would marry different people and divorce and marry and divorce, it was he and I. And so I think that's why losing him was so devastating, because he was like the one constant in my life, So I think if I look back on Brad, that's like the one thing that really stands out the most. It's just that he was my sense of security. He was my person. He was the one that I knew would always be there. He
always had your back.
Yeah. There were step parents that would come and go and step siblings that would come and go, but he was always there until he wasn't. And that was part of what made it so difficult.
I remember feeling really moved when I reached out to you a long time ago, and I sent you like my demo CD from my high school band and all this stuff. But then I remember it must've been when you had just gotten on Facebook, because you gave this really nice response where you said that the nice things that I had said about Brad's impact on me and my desire to play music and all that had prompted you to start rummaging around, and you ended up finding some letter that he had written you from camp. And I remember thinking that was so special, just to be a part of that. I don't know, it was really cool.
Yeah, I've unearthed a few of those things. I remember years ago, the Pier, which is, a website that they're fabulous with the whole reggae rock community. And they reached out to me and wanted, some pictures or something in honor of his birthday or something like that no one had ever seen. And I'm like, well, there's really not a whole lot that no one's ever seen, but, here's a letter he wrote me when he was in college. What do you think of this? And I thought they'd be like, yeah, thanks anyway. But instead they published it, and people are like, wow, this is so great. And he's talking about coming back to Long Beach and playing with Bud and Eric, and that they need to come up with a name for the band and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, that's so cool.
But he would write me letters from college, or, when we were younger, when he would go away to camp. And we used to go to summer camps a lot, again, because both our parents worked. So summertime, they had to do something with us. And we were fortunate enough to go to this horse camp in Utah through a connection, that my mom had through work. And so we were really, really fortunate to be able to go there a few years. But the first, I think, year or two, Brad went and I was too young to go. And that was just devastating to me. I remember when he would be gone for like a month, and I just, thought my world was ending. I was like 8 or 9 years old, and it was like, how can he not be here? And I was a sleepwalker and sleep talker. And my mom talks about how there were some times when in the middle of the night in my sleep, I'd be standing at the top of the stairs, just crying for Brad. But so he would, write me letters, and it's funny. Some of his letters, he's like talking about what a great time he's having. And other letters, he's like begging me to tell mom and dad to let him come home. And
oh man,
he was a great letter writer. He'd always include little pictures and illustrations and stuff, which at the time, I thought he was Rembrandt, but looking back, they're just 10-year-old pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's so cool that you guys had such a strong bond, because even earlier when you were saying, people would get into your car and they would be forced to listen to Sublime, there's other siblings where that would be totally the opposite, where they'd be like, oh yeah, my brother's brand, like the sister who would get sick of hearing about it because all their friends are like, hey, your brother's the guy from Sublime, or, but it's cool that you guys were so tight.
Yeah. It just, to me, it was a no-brainer. It didn't even occur to me to be anything but supportive, because I was happy for him. It wasn't even about the fact that he was, that it was Sublime, because of course at the time nobody, that didn't really mean anything, certainly not to my friends at college, but to me it was everything, and I'd go to the little shows, and it wasn't to, hang out and party with the band. It was just to hear my brother play. And so I'd stand out there, and, he'd see me from stage and smile, and I'd smile, and I'd watch the set and, give him a hug, and then I'd leave. I wasn't there, for the scene. I was just there because that was my brother. And I was so stoked. Yeah. I was just super stoked for him.
Wow. And did any of your girlfriends crush on him?
No, I at the time, actually, by the time they started really playing shows and stuff, let's see, I got married in 91. So a lot of times I was just, dragging my husband along with me. And I guess, just part of getting married young and right out of college and stuff. But I don't know that I ever took any of my girlfriends to the shows, because most of the time they were playing at, little dive bars, and I don't know, it's tough to convince people to, come to little dive bars when you're young.
True,
but, yeah, I don't really remember that. Although, he was a good looking guy. He never had any trouble with the ladies.
He seemed like a charmer. Sure.
Yeah. I don't know that he was a charmer. I think you're giving a little too much credit, but he was, obviously a handsome guy, and never seemed to have any trouble. I don't think he felt super confident with the ladies.
He seemed charismatic naturally, though.
Yeah. I guess I just, I think of the younger Brad when we were like in elementary school, and he was, crushing on the popular girl in 6th grade, and she, didn't give him the time of day kind of stuff. But he certainly didn't have any trouble when he was older.
Yeah. Well, being a rock and roll star will do that.
Yeah, I'm sure that helped. That's for sure. Yeah.
Oh, I can speak to that. I know that when I was younger, I felt like I definitely had girlfriends that I felt were out of my league, but I could play guitar and, got some bonus points for that.
That's right.
Some other great questions off Reddit. Someone wanted to know, I mean, obviously the self-titled album released after Brad passed away, but this person wanted to know, his name was Adam J311. He wants to know if you remember how Bradley felt about what he had recorded. And someone else added that they had heard that he had wanted to re-record the whole thing and he wasn't satisfied with it. But is there any truth to any of that?
I think any musician would feel the same way, that they're never quite satisfied. You do the best that you can, but I think there's always a sense of, there's something more I can do, or there's something more I want to put into it. Whereas the listener and the fan, the audience can, respond and love it. But I think a lot of times the artist still feels like, oh, it could have been better. Or, oh, I wish I'd done this. Or I wish I'd done that.
Perfectionism.
So, yeah, exactly. So I think there was a lot of that. And I think there were some things that he was proud of, but I don't know that he ever was completely satisfied with anything, but I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad thing either. Keep you striving for the next big thing. Yeah. Always pushing that goal marker,
Exactly. Yeah.
B-Ball 33 wants to know, what does Lord have this grilled cheese mean? Which I've heard in many songs, and I've always wondered myself. Do you know?
Well, I do. I don't know why he sang about it, except that a lot of things that he sang about just were like stream of consciousness things. It's just like something in his brain and it comes out. And as soon as I heard that, I knew exactly where it came from. So like I said, when our parents got divorced, I was 8, Brad was 10. We were still living with our mom. And a lot of times she was having a hard time going through divorce and stuff. And as a kid, that's difficult to understand as, you get older. And now that I've gone through it, I totally get it. But at the time, she was having a hard time. And so a lot of times Brad and I were left to fend for ourselves. And we knew how to make 2 things. We knew how to make cream of chicken soup. It was the Campbell's cream of chicken soup. You dump it in. And if you're lucky, you put some milk in there. If not, you just do the water. Got to do what you got to do. And the other thing was grilled cheese. And so we learned from a very early age how to make grilled cheese sandwiches. And, thank God for bread and cheese, or we would have starved, because a lot of times that's all we had. And, and there were times when we didn't even have that, but we did eat a lot of grilled cheese because that's what we knew how to make. We knew how to make grilled cheese sandwiches and cream of chicken soup. And so as soon as I heard him singing about grilled cheese, I wasn't surprised. I thought it was funny that so many other people were like, why is he singing about grilled cheese? And I'm like, because that's what we ate. But
it sounds like some code word or something,
It really wasn't. I think it was just one of those stream of consciousness things. Yeah, he just kind of threw it in there because, grilled cheese was a big part of our growing up. We would have starved and died without it.
It's the callback to youth. Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah. I'm not really sure why he threw it in there. I would have loved to ask him, but I never did.
That's still a great answer. This next one I included because this guy, it was pretty funny, some of the stuff. Like, first of all, his name is Wizard of 40 Ounce, like Wizard. So it looks like Wizard of Oz with a 40 in there.
That's awesome.
And then his question, he wanted to know how Brad was as a student. I thought he did pretty well, but if there was a particular subject that he excelled at. And he also pointed out that I know he learned science and history from KRS-One. I thought that was worth sharing.
Awesome. I don't know if I would characterize him as a good student. As I said, he was very intelligent, and when he applied himself, he did well. But I don't think that he got good grades for the sake of getting good grades. I think when he did well, it was because something stimulated his brain and made him want to try hard. Whenever he tried hard, he could do well. So
was there a subject that did that more often than others?
He loved history. Okay. I know that.
Yeah.
He enjoyed writing. So
English.
I know he enjoyed English, but sometimes you get a teacher that's more hung up on the details and the minutia, and they take all the fun out of it. I think that happens a lot actually in the education system, where you take a subject that maybe somebody would really love, but you focus on the detail things that don't matter, as opposed to the creativity or the the exciting things.
You don't grab anyone.
Right. Like history can be so dull, or it can be so fascinating, and it just depends on the way it's taught. And
I could not agree more. The older I get, the more into history I am. I find it so vibrant and interesting.
Right. But it's not taught that way.
Well, sometimes there's just shit teachers out there too, right?
Right. Like so much of history, it's just, they just want you to memorize facts and figures and that mean nothing, but when you tell the stories behind it, then it comes alive, and so that's how he was too. If it was something that he was interested in, I know, like when he got into college, he loved the philosophy classes and, the things where he could really get into it and read something and talk about it and, dissect it and that kind of thing. And those were the things that he did well in, but he had the ability to do well. He just didn't always choose to, because a lot of times if something didn't interest him, or if he didn't like the teacher, then, he'd just fuck off in class and not do his homework. And, so.
When he had ADD, didn't he?
He did. Yeah.
So that doesn't help for, focusing on class stuff.
Right. And so, and then of course, as he got older and, was adding different substances in there. It would just depend on how he was at the time, or if he was skipping class, or but he did have the ability to be a very good student, and sometimes he did well. And if it was just because it was either a subject that interested him or a teacher that he liked. But yeah, I know we gave some of his report cards to Hard Rock Cafe, and they, posted him in the Hard Rock Hotel display that they did. And a lot of people were surprised to see that he did well, But yeah, he was very intelligent and sometimes did incredibly well.
Well, it comes down to a good teacher, doesn't it?
It totally does.
I mean, that's the root of all education, really, is having someone who wants to be educating people and knows how to reach them. And so many teachers don't fall into that category.
Exactly. And honestly, I mean, I can't imagine being a teacher. I actually homeschooled my kids for 14 years, and I'm not a natural born teacher. I cannot imagine teaching someone else's children. But so my hat goes off to anybody who's an educator. But sadly, like you said, I mean, there's good ones and there's bad ones. There's ones that are really wanting to, sow into the children, and there's other ones that are just there for a paycheck. And so,
true,
it's a crapshoot, whatever you get. But I do think that when you have a good teacher, it can make a huge difference.
Oh, the great teachers out there. Yeah, my hat goes off to them as well. I just had a couple teachers on a few episodes ago. They're a couple,
Really?
they're married, and they were telling me just about how crazy it's been teaching virtually while their kids are in virtual school in the same house. And all four of them are on like different schedules trying to make lunch work. And
oh my gosh, I can't imagine.
Mayhem since the pandemic started for teachers. That's for sure.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And I mean, here in Ontario, we're still in some sort of lockdown thing right now.
Really?
Yeah, we had a really bad third wave that kicked off, I want to say at the begining of April. And it's not like martial law or anything, but it's, all the essential stuff is the only stuff that's really open. And you got to do curbside pickup for a lot of stuff. But you know what? Yeah. People have been through world wars. So
right.
We'll get through this.
We will. Absolutely. Yeah. Things are really opening up in Southern California. So we've been fortunate. I think we had some pretty rough patches for a while, but things are really starting to open up, which is nice.
Well, the U.S. took a very different approach to COVID than a lot of other countries, that's for sure. Depending on where you are in the U.S. as well. I'm sure it varies.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
I think we're all happy and that this is seemingly moving towards the end with vaccines rolling out and all that. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I cannot.
For sure. Yeah, strange times, huh? Strange times.
Definitely.
I just went to my first show last weekend for the first time in 14 months.
Oh, good.
It was glorious.
That must have been fun. Yeah.
It was really fun. I went to go see some friends play. They have a tribute band a Sublime tribute band called Burritos.
Yes, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah. They formed a few years ago to start playing. They were the very first ones that played a benefit show for us. And so yeah, they still play every now and then, and they do such a great job. I think it helps, that I know them, and they're just wonderful people. And so I love to hear them play Sublime's music, and they're all incredibly talented musicians and that play in other bands. And, they just come together every once in a while to play Sublime music. And every now and then they, do something for the foundation. And a lot of times even shows that aren't for the foundation, they'll still, like the show last weekend, they donated half the proceeds. And so, yeah, they're good people and very talented, and it's always fun. But, again, like the first couple songs, I was all, oh, this is so great. And then, I started getting emotional and, oh, I wish Brad was here. It's just, it never ends. But yeah, it was fun. It was really cool to be out. It felt strange to be out after so long. And
yeah, it's weird.
Around people.
Cabin fever. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I'm envious of you for being able to see a show. I'm sure you're going to line up a bunch more now that you can.
Yeah, it was cool. It was really cool.
You're a big Offspring fan, if I remember right.
I am. Yes.
Yeah. They had a new song recently, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I remember seeing something about that online, and I'm ashamed to say I haven't checked it out yet. But,
I used to be huge into them in high school. When Americana came out, I was all over that CD.
Such a great album. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I love them. I like their sound and I like their energy. And I actually met a really good friend when I went to an Offspring show about 11 years ago. And it was the Offspring and Pepper and 311.
Oh,
it was it was a really fun night. And we were standing on the side of the stage for the Offspring, and there was this girl next to me, and she had a big tattoo of the Sublime sun on the back of her neck. And I don't always say something to somebody, but if I feel like I'm supposed to, then I do. And so I just introduced myself to her and told her who I was, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I always thought I was going to marry your brother. I was so devastated when he died." She never met him. She was super young when he died, but she had a huge crush on him, and so we become really good friends. It's neat to me how many people I've, developed friendships with because of Brad's music. And to me, I see that as little threads, that Brad is using to kind of
course,
I don't know, just this little, yeah, exactly. And some of my closest friends now I've met because of Brad's music, and those to me are just little gifts that he's given me.
That's so cool. I've only got one more Reddit question for you. It's kind of cool though, because everyone knows, or seemed obvious that Brad was into NWA and Eazy-E because he mentioned them, but seemed that kind of odd that he never mentioned like Tupac and the Death Row Records guys that were so huge in California at the time. Was he into those artists as well, or?
All right. Well, I'm going to give you my perspective answer. And again, this is just my perspective.
Yeah, I know you can't speak for him. I don't expect you to know,
I will say in high school, he was not into hip hop at all. And I was, and he used to give me so much shit for it, Oliver. He would mock me mercilessly. And I was, at a very young age, I was going up to LA, going to clubs and dancing and, just super into that scene, among other things. But I loved that vibe. And so I listened to a lot of that, and he would give me shit for it. And then years later, he comes out with all these songs with hip hop. And honestly,
you hypocrite.
Right. I do think a lot of that was Marshall's influence, Marshall Goodman. So just tied into a lot of that. When we did,
seems so chill.
Oh my gosh, he's wonderful. I could talk to him for hours. When we had him on our podcast, I kept forgetting that I was supposed to be talking. I would just sit and listen. And then he'd get to the end of his question. I'm like, oh shit, I'm supposed to say something now. He just has so many great stories and has so much knowledge and information. And he really, I think, was a lot of the catalyst for, some of that stuff that got infused into Sublime sound. But I think that caused Brad to dive deeper into it. He just, when it was presented the right way, and he when he was ready to receive it. And, in high school, he was not. He mocked me for it. But when he got older,
when it's your younger sister versus some cool dude you just met or whatever,
Yes. So, when I'm like wearing out 2 copies of DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and he just thought that was hysterical, or LL Cool J, or like all this stuff that I was listening to. And he
it's all
just
great
gave me so much, Run DMC and like all this. And he gave me so much shit about it. I can't even tell you. And then, he ended up incorporating it into his music. But I do think that a lot of that was Marshall's influence, that then, that caused Brad to embrace it and to investigate it more and to dive into it. And, the directions that he dove just happened to be, KRS-One and NWA and all that. And so I don't think he intentionally left out any of the other stuff. I think it's just that was how it expressed itself in the music, like a lot of it was just, I think we tend to think that everything that he sang about was very intentional. Whereas I think a lot of times there were things that was just like, hey, let's do this. Yeah. Off the cuff. Exactly. Or, stream of consciousness, or, in What I Got, when he talks about, when my mom hits the bottle and goes right to the rock. Like my mom never did that.
I was wondering.
Yeah, but that was just something that, whatever was in his head, or maybe it
someone's mom did
flowed.
In the neighborhoods and
thank you. Yes. Someone's mom did, right. But it wasn't his. So, a lot of times it was just whatever worked, whatever he was in his brain at the time, maybe a story that he'd heard or something he'd been talking about or whatever, And so I think a lot of that hip hop element was introduced by Marshall, and then, he pursued it and, kind of latched onto certain things or certain artists. And so I don't think he was intentionally excluding anything, but he was never like fully immersed in the hip hop culture is kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Well, Brad was such a storyteller, and I think that always shines through all of his music.
Yeah, for sure. Storytelling. But, sometimes there was truth and sometimes there wasn't. And I think that confuses a lot of people.
Yeah, that's the
because
thing
they want
with
to find
lyrics.
truth in all of it.
People want to just assume everything is like first person, but sometimes songs are just a story, or you're writing from the perspective of someone else, or,
Exactly. It's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have one last question I want to ask you, and it is not related to Brad. It's a question we've been asking everybody this season at the end of every episode. And it's, if you could have dinner with someone dead or alive that you've never met before, who would it be and why?
Ooh, that I've never met before.
I had to put that in because I didn't want people, saying their grandma or anyone else who they just want to reconnect with.
Back. Boy, that's a good question.
Maybe Frank Turner. Oh, you already talked to him, but having dinner.
I did talk with him. I know
intimate,
it was such a fangirl moment for me. I don't know. I do. I mean, you mentioned grandparents, and so immediately I think of my grandparents. So my dad's parents were Louie and Mackie. So Louie obviously is who the dog was named after.
Yeah.
And then my dad, Brad and I got my dad a golden retriever at one point, and he named her Mackie after grandma. So we had dogs named after my dad's parents. They were wonderful people, and I miss them so much. And I was with both of them when they took their last breaths. And I just really, I lost them when I was younger, and I wish that I had their wisdom. I think they had a really amazing way of looking at life and of relating to people. And they were really the patriarch and the matriarch of our family, of our extended family. So honestly, I think if there was anybody that I could spend some more time with, it would be my dad's parents, because I do miss them so much. And I remember just wishing that I had made more of the time that I had with them. It's hard when it's your family and you feel like, they'll always be here. And, but there's so many times when I look back and I think, wow, they really did something incredible by bringing so many people together and, uniting our extended family and creating all these wonderful memories that all the kids have of growing up, with the music and the dancing and the singing. And, it was such an incredible thing. There were a lot of ups and downs, obviously, growing up, but that's something that I will always look back fondly, as these big family parties. And it was all because of my dad's parents, because they kind of connected everybody together. So I think if I had to choose anybody, I would choose them.
And if they passed when you were young, it would be so cool to speak to them as an adult yourself now and have like an actual adult conversation,
Yeah, for sure.
Well, given how sincere and beautiful that was, we can definitely break the rules of that question.
Thank you.
That was very, very nice and touching. Thank you so much again. This has been really cool. Like, I was beyond, I wouldn't say nervous, but I was like emotional about this because of how much Brad's music has meant to me and just how surreal this is. And I say that a lot because I've talked to a lot of people that I can't believe that I'm talking to, but this one was really, really deep for me. So, and you made it so comfortable. Like, all I could think of when the computer died and we were sorting all that out was, wow, like I'm so not tense at all anymore. And I can't wait to go back and continue this conversation. So thank you so much, Kellie, for your time. I will make sure to link everything relevant that we've talked about, the Nowell Family Foundation, the album you guys have out, everything else that we've talked about. So thank you so much. And I hope to talk to you again.
Thank you, Oliver. I genuinely had a really good time talking with you. You're a great guy. And I loved the questions and I loved the time we had together. So thank you. I really feel honored to be on your show. Thanks so much.
Thank you. It's so cool to finally talk after watching each other's kids grow up for a decade on Facebook.
Right. We're like extended family.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my God. Thank you so much. And don't be a stranger.
Absolutely. Have a great one.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.